Welcome to Talk is Cheap, where cheap is talk and talk is cheap. Thank you so much for joining me again, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I got a very special guest. You might actually, quite a bit of our audience, I think, is shared with him. He's Shane from Unbiased On The Fence. Shane, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Good to be on here.
So I invited you on to talk about the Mandela Effect, and we want to get into some new Earth. But before we get into that, I actually want to get into like how you got started, how you got inspired to do your channel, and a little bit of background there.
Well, I first started the channel about a month before I became aware that the Mandela Effect was actually a real phenomenon. I just thought it was sort of, a conspiracy theory on the internet. So I had known about the Mandela Effect for about a year before I had my true first experience with realizing that the Mandela Effect, you really have to have something that 100% has changed before you can become a believer in it, because you'll never trust your memory over the impossible happening, and that's exactly what it was like for me. So I started the channel Unbiased and On The Fence because I wanted a way of uniting people and sort of using empathy. Like, we take some of the types of people, like suicide bombers, for instance. You can't imagine how somebody could go through that. But if you can sort of, come out of your world and put yourself in this world, you're like, well, if I was raised in this culture, in this religion, and I was told from the time I could speak that my purpose was to do this act, and it was a noble thing to do, to sort of put yourself in that person's place and to get inside their head and realize how people can do the things they do, eat from that to, the elite and some of the things that they're into. So that was sort of where I wanted to go with the whole Unbiased and On The Fence thing. And then about a month after that, I realized the Mandela Effect was real when I had heard that the Isaiah 11:6, which used to read, "The lion shall lie down with the lamb," had changed to, "The wolf too shall dwell with the lamb." And I was like, the wolf and the lamb? And, I heard it on another YouTube channel, and I went and looked it up. I just knew he was mistaken and got it backwards. And I could not believe it when the actual print in the Bible had changed. And you could even Google Isaiah 11:6 and look at the images, and you'll see images of lions and lambs, although the scripture appears to have never said the lion shall lie down with the lamb. And there's so much residue surrounding that. So then I took a second look at the Mandela Effect, and that's when I noticed that Rodin's thinker statue had changed. And, I had one of these as a kid. My mom bought me a little desk-size replica of it at a garage sale, and I had it, all through my childhood growing up. And I'd drawn it a few times, and I had trouble making the fist to the forehead look right. And so when I found out that at that time the hand was beneath the chin, found out that's how it always was. And, subsequent to that, now, he's actually sucking on his knuckles. So it's actually changed twice. So it was a wild thing, and I knew, it was even in one of my favorite childhood shows, Mr. Wizard's World had one in the beginning and the opening sequence of it. So this was a huge part of growing up for me, and to see that it had changed in an impossible way totally made me a believer in the Mandela Effect.
What year did this go down for you, this awakening?
So this happened March 22nd of 2017. So it's been a little over a year since.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you started the channel shortly after that.
Well, I started the channel before that, so it wasn't even my intention to, be a Mandela Effect YouTuber, you know what I mean? So
when did you start the channel? Was that a year before that?
In February, yeah, the month before, in February of 2017.
Okay. Geez,
yeah.
That kind of coincided there a little bit.
In a synchronistic way, man, and, it was weird because I don't know that I would have started it if I didn't already have it started, because it totally rocked my world. When you see things changing in an impossible way, man, it's pretty trippy.
So I was going to ask, how often do you record? It seems like you're doing a show every day now.
Yeah, we do. I do pretty much at least 5 a week now. We have guests on all the time, and we've really created this community of these loving people that just come together and share their experiences. many of which are affected by the Mandela effect. And we feel like it's almost like a divine awakening or a calling, a gathering of loving people that are helping create this new earth, to shift us consciously, our consciousness into a new loving environment for everyone.
You do all these live? Do you do any pre-records anymore? I know you used to, right?
Yeah, I used to pre-record everything, and it's just much easier to do it live. So I typically just, wing it and stumble over my words and leave it in there now.
So my biggest question is, how do you get all the time to do this? Is this your full-time job now?
It is.
Damn.
When I found out the Mandela effect was real, man, I guess I worked for a couple more months at the flea market, and I had like regulars that would come in, and I'd share the information about the Mandela effect with them, and I was equally freaked out by the response I got from people. Like, no, it's always been that way, and so it's just I couldn't do it anymore, man. It was like just a different world. It was almost just as freaky as the Mandela effect itself, is seeing how people would just, either think it's always been that way or see the change, and then you tell them how it is now, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's how it is. And they'll just change their story right after you explain something to them, So it makes it hard to deal with people like that.
Yeah,
So,
I'm
I've
getting
been
there
doing
myself totally too. It's like going to the job and it's like, I'm so sick of this. And it's like, I want that guarantee that the new earth is next year. I'd freaking quit right now.
Yeah, man. I've been waiting for this whole thing because the Mandela effect actually led me down this road to the new earth. I mean, it's all been connected for me. The Mandela effect led me to the work of Dolores Cannon, the hypnotherapist, and she talked about this new earth thing happening and the splitting and all of this. And I was led to the information within the law of one, which talked, this was in 81 when the law of one came out, but it talked in 30 years you would see, they called it harvest, which was the language Jesus actually used, the harvesting of the souls or whatever. People don't like that term because it sounds like, you're getting harvested by Dracos and stuff. So everything gets twisted and stuff, you know what I mean? But it's all talking about the same thing. It's like different perspectives of the shift of human consciousness,
Your program is, you're totally inspiring me because I want to get more content out myself, but doing, getting the editing going, because I filmed the show, that's an hour there, do the editing, and you're talking about 2 or 3 hours later. So I'm going to step up my game and try to see if I can't pull it off like you and try to do some live stuff. But I got to get the infrastructure in place, but it's something I'm working on, but I'm totally excited to do that. So.
Oh yeah, it's definitely streamlined. Left me more time for actually, looking into things and stuff like that.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I was
time to do research because I don't have time to do research. It's like, I get guests that are viewers that email me stuff. It's like, I don't have time to look at this. I'm in my editing cycle. So then you get that downshift and you're not staying in the flow with everything. So it'll be interesting to sit there and switch cameras live, but I think I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah, man, and your production quality is just awesome. So, it's definitely worth the time you spend.
So you have a lot of guests on your show. You had Michelle Wolf, Lauren Hansen, Candace Krall-Goldman, Julie Barnes, Michelle Walling, Joseph Rain, Allison Coe. She's been on here. Angela Gabrielle. She's been on here also. Nathan and Jim talked about DJ Sam. Lori Lothane. You actually had her on yesterday. That was a good one.
Yeah.
And of course, your longtime co-host, Jose.
Jose.
Jose? Is that how you say it?
Yeah. So yeah, she's been doing her live shows lately, so she hasn't been on as much, but she's actually doing her live stuff now, which is awesome. So it gives people a place to go and chat and just hang out and everything. So yeah, and it's like I've inspired several people that started their channels up as a result of inspiring them, and it's cool, man. It's like I'm totally supportive. I love, like, even Eileen from one channel, I have her on. So it feels good to inspire people to do things.
Absolutely. So now that you had all these people on, we'll get into the Mandela effect shortly here, folks. But let's just briefly talk about the event and the New Earth stuff. So we had these energies come in on March 18th. I could totally feel that. What was your experience like on the 18th? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was feeling really amped up and energized, and I was even getting visuals that I'd never had before. Like I was getting these crystal geometric patterns during meditation, and even before I would fall asleep. I was totally feeling like I was tapping into some kind of energy and seeing things that I just wasn't used to seeing, and feeling things. I had this reconnection with Case from Everyday Masters, and even now I can still feel my hands buzzing from that. So it's really awesome stuff, man. We're definitely moving into something new.
See, for me, I felt all that on the 18th, and then after March, I don't know if it was because of my mind that nothing happened, and I felt a drop, and it's been like that until this last weekend, and now I feel more energy again.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I sort of had that die off too, towards I guess the end of April into the beginning of May. It felt like it sort of died off.
The synchronicities died off too for a little bit there. Now I noticed today they really kicked in. I was doing the meditation with you on your show. This is being filmed on the 15th, folks. So you had Michelle Wolf on doing that meditation. As soon as she said that, the bubble burst, my garage door opened. So that's a hell of a synchronicity.
It's so funny because during that show that you're talking about that we just did, man, it was like I kept seeing synchronicities, and like either the run time of the video, I looked down, it was like at 24 minutes and 44 seconds, so I see 2444, and then I look down at the clock a few minutes later and it's 222, and it's like, dude, this is like a simulation or something. It's like, what's making me notice all of these things? And then at one point I saw 144 people in the chat, and I'm like, man, this is just, it's definitely ramped up, and it did feel like it had died off a little bit, but it's coming back again, and I think that's all part of it.
I don't know how long they want to make us, obviously it's getting so obvious for us, but I mean, how long do they want to prolong this before they finally make the flip on the switch, if you will?
Oh, I know, man. And it seems like there's so much happening until you start talking to people that are asleep, and you're like, oh gosh, is this even close? Because some people are just as asleep as they've always been. And even people I know, they get hostile when you talk about anything. Like if you talk to mainstream media is fake and stuff like that, they get hostile. They call you trumpeteers and things like that.
And I don't understand this whole hate against Trump. I mean, everybody's saying that he's this bad guy, and I look at it and it's like, no, everything he's doing is, everybody got pissed about the Iran deal. Well, that's clearing stuff up here. What's going on? And there must just be like a split in people's mind or something.
Yeah, it is. It's like they hear what they want to hear. And, it was funny because my son, when he was going to school last year, before the election or whatever, and they were, I live in an area, he goes to school with a lot of Mexicans and stuff. So they were all afraid they were going to get kicked out of the country, and they had all these fears, and he would come home talking about it. And, I'm not into politics, so I'm like, I don't know, we'll just see what happens. And, I was even like that for Obama. I really wasn't for the guy. But once he got elected, I'm like, well, give the guy a shot. You know what I mean? It's just the democracy process. So I'm like, give the guy a shot, see what he can do. I don't ever really expect much from any politician, to be honest with you. So, and I just think, if half the people who voted for the guy or over half, then just, give him a shot, and so let Obama, do his term or whatever. And then, Trump gets in. I'm like, well, just, give him his shot or whatever. So he's going to school this year. And I'm like, all the people that were afraid they were going to get kicked out of the country, did any of those people disappear or anything? And he's like, no, they're all still here this year. And I'm like, okay, well, that lets you know that they're just pushing fear. They're pushing fear that this is going to happen or this is going to happen, and nothing ever happens from it. Did any of the things that they were afraid of happen? And he's like, no. So just from this little 11-year-old's point of view, you can see how so much fear is pushed on the people. Don't vote for this guy because of this or that. And, it's they use that to get votes, You protect yourself to, vote for this guy or you're going to get kicked out of the country or whatever. So it's all chaos. It's all orchestrated chaos, I feel like, man.
Yeah, it's the other term when Obama was elected, everybody was dealing with it by now, and we're going about our daily lives. And now this is still continuing, and it's just driving a wedge into the country.
Yeah.
But to me, that's how you know he's on our side, when the media is attacking him as bad as they are. So
that's a good point, and I use that quite a bit these days, man. Now that I see that the media is purposely there to push agendas and stuff, I look at that as indicators of what we shouldn't believe. Why do they want us to believe that? It must be something else, you know.
One thing that's interesting is it's actually just started today as I'm filming this dark sky drill in Wisconsin. Now, Secure Team 10 talked about this, and it's basically a simulation of a power outage. And this is going to go for 3 days. So why are they training for this? Do they know that this wave of, rainbow energy is coming in? And because that's what they said when this event, is it the event or when the event hits, we're supposed to not have communications and stuff. And you're supposed to be more telepathic. So
yeah,
do they know? That's the question.
Sounds like they do. They know the energy's coming, and it's going to, it could be similar to, a coronal mass ejection, a CME from the sun, where it just sends us back to the dark ages for a while. But I don't believe I think everything's being, handled on a higher level, and we don't even have to worry about a lot of these things. I think they're just pushing it for fear, to get people resonating with fear and worry, rather than just trusting that things are handled and that we do have higher help available to us. Although I wish it would kick in a little sooner.
Yeah, they got to step up their game over there.
Hurry up already.
It's about damn time.
Yeah, really.
Did you watch Allison Cole's latest video? I'm sure you did.
Yes, I did, unless you put one out really recently. No, I saw one about a week ago, I guess.
That's the one. Yeah, because nothing happens. You're kind of like, I kind of quit looking into it for a little while. But when I watch her video, the message still resonates with me. And the fact, those people that were going through that experience, some said the event still happened 2018, and then they're going to the new Earth in 2019.
Right. Yeah, and I think she, from the get-go, she was saying, anywhere from the next 3 to 6 months or whatever. And as soon as 3 months pass, everybody wants to, jump her and say, well, you said it was going to happen. And she always said from the beginning, take it with a grain of salt. It's just, the information might be, not exact or whatever, and just not to, not pay your taxes. I think she made a joke about, I mean, we were just hoping, but she always did say, the first quarter to the, 6 months or whatever. So we were just kind of hoping for the earlier time, but it was always 3 to 6 months from what I remember anyway.
Yeah, she actually had to shut her comment section down, I saw.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So I just texted her personally and made my comment, but whatever.
Yeah, done one. Yeah, I totally. You just don't want to deal with the 3D people. We got a few of those on this channel. I'm sure you do too, but yeah,
you got to roll with it.
Yeah, I got great moderators though. So shout out to the moderators for we had to nick some people out of the chat today even. So they do a good job.
Huh. So you've talked about the sun changing colors. There was one day, I think it was probably a month or two ago, I noticed that it was yellow again, just that one day, but I was like, this is totally how I remembered it. It had that yellow hue on the ground. But now it's white again. Was
that during the fires? I think I noticed the day and I thought, man, the smoke's making it look more like it used to look. It was,
God, I don't know.
I think I was thinking it was the smoke from the fires maybe doing it. But yeah,
I don't think that would carry that far over in Wisconsin, but.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so I was equally thinking California fires, but I saw on one of the satellite things how they were showing how the smoke made it all the way to the UK. So
holy cow.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, that's news to me.
Yeah, it gets caught in a jet stream, I guess, and it's really no big deal to make it all the way over there.
Quickly, can you talk about the SAM messages and how that works? Because just a quick breakdown. So you ask a question and you have your radio on shuffle, and then it's supposed to answer you?
Yeah, so I had a segment, a 7-show segment with Nathan Sanders, who had a near-death experience, and what she met during that time of being dead, he met a guy named Sam, who would later, once he was alive and kicking or whatever, he would send him messages through Pandora's music app. And so to know he was really, like I said, it's like 20 hours of videos that people can watch as a playlist. But basically he would ask a question and hit the random shuffle on there and get an intelligent response. And then to back that up, he would get a real world physical confirmation. So like he might get a song message about, one thing, and then while he's out and about, he'll see a truck drive by or the license plate in front. I think one time it was like he was behind a car that said Samzilla instead of Godzilla, sort of replacing God with Sam or whatever. And he's not saying, Sam is God, but it's sort of like when you think of this higher agency at work, they're all like, playing the benevolent force anyway, is like taking the place of God or acting sort of like God's hand, you know what I mean? So whether it's the angels or higher, density beings or whatever you want to call it, they're all sort of playing for the same team. So I think that was just a nifty little way of saying, Sam's playing for God's team or whatever. But really cool stuff. I've done it myself. I've had really intelligent responses to it. I've even experienced it on the radio. You can hit the seek button on your car radio, and he'll say, "Play it, Sam," or whatever, and you just hit that, and you'll get with a question in mind, you'll get an intelligent response. And a lot of people are doing it and having really positive results. And I think the takeaway is just to start paying attention, because we have this connection to a higher benevolent force, always available to us, always there to help us. And we're just usually too busy to pay attention. So you don't even really have to do the shuffle thing, but I think it's a good practice at just seeing how well it works. But if you have a question in mind and you just look for an answer throughout your day, you'll get it, whether it's in a bumper sticker or the song that plays on the radio or overhearing a few words of a conversation of people that's walking by. I found I get answers in so many ways that it freaks you out a little bit, not in a bad way, but it's like, man, this all seems orchestrated like a video game,
Yeah, it's insane when you think about it. So you said a lot of these people are NPCs.
Right. So, yeah, that's sort of the thing you toss around. Are people, like when you play a video game, there's these programmed players that they're not like other players. They're just sort of put in there to give you this real environment. And so an NPC is a non-player character. It's sort of ran by the simulation. So one of the theories going around is that there's NPCs running around. They just sort of make this reality seem more real. I like to think of them just so they aren't treated as less people, because the slippery slope is that you can say, well, they're not a real person, don't treat them well or something. So they
don't matter, don't worry about them.
Right. So we don't need any more psychopaths in the world. It's like, well, they're not even real. We can do what we want to. So I like to think of them as the secret shoppers of reality. It's like they're there to try to trigger you and make you angry, but it's part of your job to treat them with love and respect, and not to let them get under your skin, to rise above the typical anger response or whatever you might have when someone cuts you off or whatever. They're just there. Our job is to, respond out of love, and their job is to see if they can trip us up. So thinking of it that way, even if they're real or not real, it doesn't matter, because you're going out of your way to treat them with love. So.
Didn't Dolores Cannon say that these are basically random people, but then if you go up and interact with them, then all of a sudden they're real? Right.
Background people, I think she referred.
Yeah.
And Flora Brune, who you had on not too long ago, she calls them empty seaters.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And I think that's a funny name for them, too. But, yeah, it's like one other theory I had is that, these people are operating on more of a global consciousness, a lower consciousness. And then, the more awake people are maybe operating on more of a Christ consciousness. So it's like two different operating systems. Which one are we tapping into? And at any point, you can be sort of sucked down into the earth consciousness and respond in more of a 3D fashion, or you can rise above it and respond in more of the loving Christ consciousness fashion. So I don't really know. I'm sort of on the fence about it.
You're on the fence about everything, aren't you? It's a good name for the show.
Yeah, it really does represent me really well, because until I'm really sure about something, I don't really disregard any kind of information. I consider everything, and I put it on the shelf and cluster things together until, a narrative is that I can get behind is sort of it makes sense. That's how I am with the Mandela Effect. It was a huge mystery, and I got all these what I consider to be sort of like downloads of information about how it all works and why it's happening and all of this, and I was satisfied. But I know it's not like that for other people. Just to hear me say those things, I think they have to sort of go on their own truth-seeking journeys to investigate it. And, I can share my findings, but, when you're talking about something that's seemingly impossible happening, you've got to really experience it for yourself and do the work yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's segue into the Mandela Effect. So let's go through some of these ones that you thought were pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, so there's a couple of really popular ones I can go through first. Like, for instance, Looney Tunes. I remember being a kid and thinking about the cleverness of tunes, like playing off the word cartoons.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
and
this was a big one for me too.
Oh, was it? Okay,
Yeah.
because man, it's like tunes, like music or frequencies.
iTunes.
Yeah. So it's like, and I've had people say, well, they had merry melodies and that was the music and this was the, I'm like, well, if they had merry melodies, they already had a name for the music portion of it. They were doing the cartoons. And, I remember being a kid and, realizing the cleverness of it. But, with each of the Mandela effects, I try to look at what it's trying to tell us. And, this sort of ties in. That's why I say it all seems to tie into this whole new earth thing and how, our frequency, which is tunes, when you think of like tunes in the new spelling, you think of music and or tunes on the radio or tuning your guitar or whatever, and it's all dealing with frequencies, right? So we've got crazy frequencies going on right now. So all the Mandela Effect messages I've gotten seem to be revealing a truth about something. I think a good one.
Yeah, the thing is, why would they call Tiny Toons the other way?
Right.
Why would they have that difference?
Yeah, you got to love the fact that there are these what they call residual proof that things aren't the way they used to be, and this was another one that, like Fruit Loops. I grew up with Fruit Loops, and it was spelled normal like fruit, but apparently now it's always had the double O.
This is another big one for me.
Right. So Fruit Loops, and here's the message I got in this. There's no fruit in Fruit Loops. It was revealing a truth.
Oh, okay, sure.
So it was like, just revealing that there is no fruit in Fruit Loops. So you got to be honest, right? So another one, I don't know if this one affected you or not. I've seen several spellings of this, Oscar Mayer, but for me, the message I got in this one, because it looks like Oscar Mayer now, and I was a big fan of John Mayer. And he had his first big song that was popular was called No Such Thing. And in the song, it talks about there's no such thing as the real world. It's a lie you've got to rise above. So when you say something is BS, you say it's baloney, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's sort of the non-cussing way of saying something's BS.
I never made these connections, dude. Oh, man.
Right. So that's why I'm sort of taking you down this path I've gone down. So the baloney is that we're living in a real world.
This is great.
Yeah, so you can look to John Mayer for, to figure out what the baloney is. Another big one was the Volvo. Now, I remember the diagonal line across the grills growing up. We had some neighbors that had a couple of Volvos, and I remember looking at them. But, it's got this emblem on there now, which is the Mel emblem. And this was another thing that I thought sort of pointed to the fact that we sort of abandon the divine feminine. This is a real patriarchal society where women aren't treated the same. Even in parts of the world still today, they treat women as second-class citizens or whatever, and women aren't treated the same. And, we really need that nurturing in our, the loving, the creative, nurturing part of us is the feminine. And so I think this is sort of pointing to where we've gone wrong as a society, sort of, doing more of the fighting in the masculine side, and letting go of the loving, nurturing,
I would almost,
feminine
I don't want to get in a big debate here, but I'd almost say there's a war on men now. It's gotten pretty bad that way, but
yeah.
But that's a side topic.
Right. Yeah. Well, when you think of it globally, though, there's still there's
Yeah, sure. Globally, yeah.
other countries that's pretty bad still, I think. I do want to show one of the biggest ones for me was, of course, Rodin's thinker statue. And so here we have the original, or the way it is now, which he's sucking on his knuckles. Now, at the time I did this picture, it's so funny because his hand was more under his chin. And
And what the hell's that thing coming out of his head?
right, that's a great question. Yeah, it looks like he's got I'll let people decide for themselves what that looks like. But when you look at this, his whole structure now, it's changed. He's not even on his right leg anymore. So he's shifted completely to his left side. This elbow is actually on his left thigh. There's a better angle of this, people can look it up for themselves, but he looks really uncomfortable and just awkward just in his stance. Now, he used to be more like this picture here I photoshopped of him, where his hands are really across both legs and his arms like more steady and centered, and he's looking with his third eye because it's the thinker. How is he thinking? He's thinking with his third eye in the original way, and the fist was more clenched originally, but like I said, I just photoshopped this.
Yeah, and you had the statue in your room, so that's why it was such a big eye opener for you.
Right, and I remember as a kid, when you draw stuff and it looks funny and you don't get it quite right. Well, I had problems. It just didn't look right with the fist to the forehead, so I had problems making that part look right, and the picture looked sort of crappy. And I remember, never being happy with, the arm would either look too long or, so it just made it because I got aggravated at that part. It made it really stick in my mind.
So
but
what do you think this one's telling us?
I think it's telling us that if you look at this one here, he's more centered. He's thinking with his third eye. His eyes were originally closed, and he was centered on his right and his left. But now we've moved to a society where we've moved to our left brain, which is more the masculine, the analytical part of ourselves. And I think that's what's sticking out. It's like we've moved so far to the left, we're actually coming out the left side of the head, and we've shifted completely to the left. Just as a society. And another one, I don't have the picture here, but it's a real famous painting called American Gothic painting. And it used to be, this farmer couple that are facing straight ahead, both of them facing right at the camera point of view, or the artist painting it. But now the divine feminine on the right is looking to the left. So all of these were, for me, telling me the same exact thing, that we've moved to our left. We've sort of abandoned that creative part of our brain. And there's a great TED Talk with Jill Bolte Taylor where she talks about having a stroke and losing the left part of her brain. And she was so free and she was in nirvana. And our brains are really two distinct parts.
How was she on the outside for people? Was she more like autistic?
Yeah, she was more, she had actually she was a brain or neuro scientist or something. So her job was with the brain, but yeah, she had lost all of her ego. So she was totally like, wetting herself and not feeling embarrassed about it and having to relearn everything. And she knew all this information about like the human body, but didn't know like the names for everything. It's really interesting to watch that TED Talk, but that really, I found that after I was getting these messages about the left versus the right brain and how we moved to the left and we needed to get back more to the loving, nurturing, creative side of who we are. Oh, this one was a really huge one for me. I don't know. Were you affected by the JFK assassination by any chance?
I'm trying to think. I think I remember it as a long car. Right. But I only remember 4 people in it.
Right. So yeah, I photoshopped
and this looks like a 4-seater.
Right. So this is the photoshopped version of it, and this is exactly how I remember it. I remember this politician who's still directly in front of JFK. I remember Jackie was the only female in the car. The driver was the only Secret Service agent. And it was in black and white, the famous Zapruder film, where it shows the assassination. It was the only film at the time. But now apparently the film's always been in color, and there's not only Jackie Kennedy, but I can't remember this guy's name right offhand. The other politician, his wife, Governor Connolly, and Governor Connolly's wife is now with him, and now up where Governor Connolly used to sit is another Secret Service agent. So the two additions to this current reality is the wife here and the other Secret Service agent. So, and there wasn't this bar across here.
Yeah, I don't really remember that either.
Yeah,
I definitely remember it was black and white.
Yeah, and it's so graphic now when you watch it. And I remember how graphic it was as a kid watching it because, even though it was black and white, it was still like, shocking to see that happen. But, with us being desensitized by video games and movies and stuff now, it's like, they would have never shown that on television when I was a kid, but they did. And I remember it being, some of the most graphic footage I'd ever seen, even though it was in black and white. But now, apparently, it was always in color.
Yeah, and I remember when I was going through my awakening, I was watching some videos, and a lot of people were talking about the driver being one of the shooters.
Right, which would be really hard now with a whole nother row of people between there.
Yeah. So, yeah. Good. I don't know.
And it's strange because this doesn't affect everybody. I know people that's, can see the Mandela effect happening, but for them, they say, no, it's always been 6 people in the car. So that's one of the strange things about the Mandela effect is like, just because you see one change, you won't see them all. And it seems like the closer you are, because you typically think, like if it's something with anatomy, because we've had anatomy changes, like the heart used to be on the left.
Yeah.
They would say 3 finger widths beneath the left nipple is where the heart is. But now apparently it's like almost dead center in the chest. And
See, my question is, how does that affect surgeons? Were they not affected by that? Because they would go in there cutting thinking it's going to be there. And
exactly, man. That's sort of my point. When you see the anatomy changes, you think, well, I'll ask my aunt who's a nurse or my uncle who's a doctor about this, but you'll go talk to them and they'll be like, no, it's always been in the center. You're like, what? It's like, that's one of the reasons why I began to realize this was a positive thing, and the changes sort of remain benign. And if they aren't benign, if it can cause harm, the person just doesn't see it. So if you're talking a heart surgeon or somebody, he won't see the change. For him, it'll always be in the center. Even if you had a long discussion about it with him a decade ago, that conversation never happened for him.
Well,
so
I remember in school, it's like when you do the pledge, it's like put your right hand on your heart. You were way over here, and you could feel it beating pretty good.
Yeah.
So what the hell?
Yeah, and it was weird because I have my son. I'm like, because I don't have a stethoscope or anything. I'm like, son, here, listen to my chest. Where does it sound like? And it was right in the middle of my chest, man. It was clear to him. He goes, no, it's for sure right there. So how did my heart move within my body? And I had heart problems, which I don't have anymore, man. Those left with it. So I don't know if they swapped out my ticker for a new one. I don't really know how it works.
That's
but
insane.
It's wild. It is.
Maybe they fix you up on a ship or something too.
Yeah, man. Is that what happens or what? It's so funny because I even had a crooked rib. My ribs weren't symmetrical, and one side was sort of caved in, and they're not anymore. And one of the things that's changed is our rib cage. So my ribs are symmetrical, but I know I didn't jump from another reality to this one because, like, I got like my fat rolls from where you sit down and your rolls fold up, and they were crooked from the crooked rib. So even though my ribs are straight now, I still have that little crease that's crooked from having a lifetime of a crooked rib. So we're in the same bodies, it's just we've been hacked somehow.
Just bring on the superpowers.
Yeah, really. I think we're getting there, man. They say if you were to like go back to the Jesus days now, 2,000 years ago, we would look like we're glowing to those people back then. So.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah, so I think things are happening. It's just sort of like... I could
see that because like when I sit back and think about, even like 2008, you just feel like it was so dense back then, the reality.
Yeah. So it's with the changes, like even like, geography changes. We've had like major changes. Like people say they remember South America being way more underneath North America. Now it's like way over to the right. And some changes with New Zealand as far as its relationship to Australia.
Yeah, that's one for me. Yep, up farther. Or at least the same, and then over.
So you think, oh, I'll go talk to a pilot or a ship captain about this because they'll know it's changed. They know geography well, but for them, then we're getting into that benign thing. It's not benign anymore. So
I was
they
trying to
if they
talk
get
about
lost at sea,
yeah, I was trying to talk about some of this stuff with my coworkers, and then they say, "Didn't you have geography in school? Are you stupid?" And it's like, all right, I'm not going to talk about this anymore.
Yeah, man. At first, I thought when I was told you about the flea market thing and talking with different people, I'm like, man, am I going to have to start playing along? Like, I don't see this stuff happening because nobody was seeing it, man.
Yeah, then you just end up okay, I guess we'll just go along with it, and that's what happens.
Right? You start thinking of the consequences. You're like, man, are they going to start trying to take my kids away and stuff if I don't play along? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think some people had that happen too, if I remember correctly. That they,
I wouldn't doubt it.
oh, I don't remember where I saw that, but I swear I heard that somebody had a son and then they didn't have one or something like that.
Oh, right, right. Yeah, I'd heard one where the guy, his neighbor had, there was twin sisters that lived next door in a video I watched, and he said, that he went over and he was like, "Where's your sister?" And she's like, "I don't have a sister," and like they didn't even miss her. It's like she never existed. But he specifically remembered like one was going to college and the other one worked somewhere or something. But yeah, it's like it never happened for them people.
Yeah, maybe
And
that
it gets
was,
back to that close thing.
yeah, maybe that was the same video I saw. Huh. What else do you
Yeah.
have?
One of the big ones for people. Now, this wasn't an anchor memory for me, but it was. People remember the Kit Kat with the dash in there.
Oh, I certainly do.
Yeah, but apparently in this reality, it's never
never
had the
existed.
dash. It's just always been Kit Kat. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and you can go back and search, and the old logos don't have it.
Right. And another one is, people remember J.C. Penney spelt, like penny. And there's even here's some residual proof of it being spelled J.C. Penney, which is Penny. But now, here's a picture I took at the mall. It's got this E in there, and that just looks so odd to me.
Yeah.
And I remember, Back to the Future, because it was one movie I went and checked out, and I was like, you know what? I remember when they first were taking the DeLorean, you could see a J.C. Penney in the background. I'm like, let me go look that up. And I go look it up, and it's changed. I mean, it's so weird the way stuff just, anywhere it appeared gets updated. It doesn't matter if you got an old DVD in your attic, you pull it down, man, and it's like it's always been that way. That's what's so trippy about this whole thing.
The one thing that was interesting, because when I presented this a while ago on this show and had the J.C. Penney, like people that worked there were putting no E in there. And it's like, you work at the store, you see the logo every day, you should know how it's spelled.
Right.
And they didn't even have it in there. There was so many. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild the way, and I've heard a worker say, yeah, we used to get trained on the fact that the spelling way back in the day. So they actually remember, people saying at the J.C. Penney saying, make sure people spell it right, because a lot of people want to spell it like penny, and it's not spelled that way. And they have anchor memories of being told, to make sure people put the E in there and stuff. So I don't know, man. It's just weird. I can totally see why people feel like we're from two different realities or two different timelines, because it totally seems like that.
It does.
Like there's. But a few things that I wish I had the picture of it. Maybe you can pull it up in the post, but there's a picture. I can send it to you later. But there's a picture of the Thinker statue with 18 softball students posing next to it with their fist to their forehead, like you do when you're going to mimic a statue. You look at it, you mimic it, and now the statue has changed, but all 18 softball girls are, posing next to it with their fist to their forehead.
Oh,
and
yeah, you got to send me that.
There's several images like this where people are posing in the original, fist to the forehead pose, which I think they even have like a weightlifter pose called the Thinker, where, you turn and you put your fist to your forehead. And it's like a pose, and it's called the Thinker pose. And yet that's not how the Thinker is posed. So, yeah, it's when you look at something like that, you can see how if we had shifted into another timeline, then the kids, their version on this timeline, would have posed the way the statue looks. But because they posed in the old way, you realize that our perception of the past has been hacked in the now. So that statue's been changed miraculously, the picture updated. of the past, but at the time those kids took the picture next to the statue, it was that way. And then when you look at like the X-Files, this gets into what I was saying about, what to believe with the media and stuff like that. But the X-Files version of it, they tried to make it false memories, but their backup plan was that it's an alternate reality. So because they were pushing the whole alternate reality agenda, I tend to, that knocks it down a few points for me, if that's what they're pushing. Like, why are they trying to push that on us,
Different timeline, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty, if you're everybody's by the statue and they're doing the wrong thing, that's kind of stupid.
Right. And we're talking like 8-year-olds and, they look pretty young.
If they're young, they're going to want to mimic the statue. They're not going to do something different.
Not all 18 of them are going to get it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's sort of, I think disproves the whole hoax thing because, you can see parents standing around and stuff. Like, would they really, be cool with making their kids make a hoax picture? I don't know. It's just, I think there's really good proof that something really happened. And, that's the rodent stinker statue residue is some of the best I've seen that points to what's really going on. And I think the whole timeline thing, although it's easy, it's good to think of it in that way symbolically, but I don't think we're really dealing with time in a linear fashion. I think we're looking at, sort of this ball of consciousness that's happening at one time. And because that's really all we ever have. We can only look at the past from now. You can look at what books look like now of the past or pictures of, the past and the now, but really now is all you have to perceive the past,
Yeah. Yeah, that's all you can do is go with the current, and I guess, and just let it flow. Another big one for me was Captain Crunch.
Now it's Cap'n Crunch.
It makes sense why they would do that. Aye, Captain, but
right.
I still remember the full word.
Yeah. And it's trippy, man, to watch an old movie like I think Police Academy had, where they were in the cereal aisle, and this was like in the 80s or 90s. The movie was so old, and you see Fruit Loops in the background, and it was the old style box, but the fruit was still spelled with the 2 O's, and it's just like, man, it's just so trippy the way stuff gets updated. You know what I mean?
God, I would have remembered that too. You got a couple more you want to show? We can wrap up.
Let's see here. I think I had a nurse on the other day. Who was that? Julie, the nurse and author. Trying to think of her name. I can't think of it right now.
Julie Barnes?
Yeah, Julie Barnes. Thank you. So she's not into the Mandela Effect, although she sees it happening. She wasn't into it that much, and so I was asking her about the anatomy changes. And I expected her not to see the anatomy changes because she's a nurse, because that's typically how it works. So what you typically have to do is ask her something that's benign, and this is sort of where I've come up with this whole theory. I said, "You remember Depends, adult diapers, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, well, it appears to have always been Depend without an S. This is the current version of it with the S. Or I'm sorry, this is the current version without the S, but this is how people remember it. They remember it being Depends. And there was jokes about it, like, Depends, But now it doesn't have the S on the end. So this was a huge one for me, and I think a lot of people would remember it that way.
The hard part with this one is people would, it's the pluralization. So, like, people might, if you're talking about 1 or 2, Depends.
Right.
No,
I love the pun.
No pun intended. That just came out.
Another one that I can share here I think is a good one is the Mona Lisa. Now, the Mona Lisa, people remember this. People have had like long conversations about whether she's smiling or not, but there's no doubt about it now. She's smiling, and she's clearly smiling. And I actually photoshopped a version of how I remember it being, which was more of a smirky kind of a smile. You just don't know. There's some mystery into what her facial expression is. And a lot of people don't remember this hairnet thing on there either. But, This is the current version. You can clearly tell she's smiling. This is how I remembered it. And all I really did was I just sort of took the the squintiness. It almost looked like somebody went back in time and gave her a J to smoke or something. Like, you know what I mean? Anyway.
Yeah, I definitely don't remember her smiling. That was typical of old photos for them not to smile because they're posing for hours.
Right. Yeah, yeah. But now it appears that, you can read articles where they're discussing whether she's smiling or not. And they're describing something more like this, where, it's more of maybe a smirk, but you just don't know. And this one, I think almost everybody remembers this being "Life is like a box of chocolates" from Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks' famous line. Now, if you look it up, it apparently was always "Life was like a box of chocolates."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it, yeah, is.
So there's really like tens of thousands of changes at this point people have discovered. And, some of them are so minor, like we were just talking about the S on the end of depends. So it's not like that big of a deal to where people won't just think it was just a product change or something along those lines. But there's just so many of them. And it spans through like movies, music, and anatomy, geography changes. Pretty much anything that is popular, people have noticed the change. And even the Bible is another real big one, which I brought up the whole lion and the lamb scripture. But there's dozens of other ones in the Bible as well that people have noticed. So, yeah, it's happening, man.
It's trippy.
It is, man. It's mind-blowing.
It's all happening.
It's all happening.
Famous quote.
And I think it's really pointing to it's some of the best evidence I think we have at the fact that something is changing. We're not in Kansas anymore, as they say in The Wizard of Oz. Things have really began to change, and the Mandela Effect stuff is really the best hard evidence. Although you can't really, if people don't see it, the current reality shows them that their memories are right. So you can't really convince anybody unless they have memories of the way it used to be. But for me personally, it's the best evidence that we are moving into a new reality, a new Earth.
Yeah, in preparation for that, that's why I changed my diet. I quit drinking. I wanted to clean all that out, and now my memory's starting to get better. So I'm trying to be more conscious of what I see now. So when it does change, I'll know it for sure. I want that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then one of the phenomenons with this is they call it a flip-flop, where something changes and then changes back. And one of the ones when I first realized, because I got off my ADHD meds and I quit smoking, weed, and I quit everything like, a year ago or whatever, because of the whole thing you're just explaining, where I just wanted to get cleaned up and I wanted to try to save money. And one of the things was Houston, we've had a problem, is what it was at the time. And people were saying, no, it was Houston, we have a problem. And, I sat there and I was like, I don't know. But then it flip-flopped back to Houston, we have a problem again. And I got to experience the fact that sometimes stuff will change and then change back. And so that was the big one for me. So you even got it where stuff would change and then change back. And then you got people arguing over the fact that it changed one way, and it's nonsensical because they're arguing against the way it currently is, and it's so funny to go read the articles and stuff.
One thing was funny, and I showed it at work, and everybody started arguing about it. Was that dress? Everybody was arguing about that dress color. Some people saw the blue and black, and the other people saw the gold and the white, and it was so funny watching people get so pissed to each other about it, because like, what? No, that's gold.
Yeah, man, I can't remember which way it ended up being, but I saw it one way and I was like, what are they talking about? And then once I started seeing it the other way, I couldn't see it the original way anymore unless I left it for a while and came back to it. But yeah, that was pretty trippy.
Yeah, I saw gold.
Were you able to see it both ways?
No, I saw gold and white. And then when I saw there was somebody found the actual dress and saw the real picture of it, and then I saw it black. But the thing is, if you take the eyedropper on the computer, it's gold. So why are some people not picking up on that? Because technically the gold is right, I guess, if we go by the computer standards.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Yeah, it was like, I think I saw a picture where somebody had put it on white and somebody had put it on like black. So it was like if you saw it at night, then it looked a certain color, and if you saw it in the daytime, then it looked another color. So, but yeah, it was yeah. If you do the eyedropper thing, I can see why the
I
black
was watching
was
a
gold,
tech
'cause
show,
it was.
and then they were getting all arguing about it. He's like, "Go put an end to this right now." They got the eyedropper out, and sure enough, so it was awesome.
But that's true. But I mean, you can go in on someone's face, man. So I mean, you can go in on someone's face and pull green out of the pixel on their face, and you're like, they're green. And you're like, no, they're not. But you know, you can pull a green pixel off of their skin, and you know,
Well,
they're clearly not green.
yeah, when I
you
do
know?
a color correcting for the show, like I was just doing it by eye before. That's why I use the paper at the beginning of it that I try to cut out sometimes. But sometimes I started color grading, and then you look at the skin, and it was green. I'm like, I was grading more green skin. And it's like, so it's all on how you take it, I guess. But
Yep, totally, man.
all right, so where can people find you? Who do you got coming up for guests on your show? And anything else you want to say?
Yeah, well, let's see. I do have some interesting guests lined up. I don't have the list right in front of me right now, but people can find me on YouTube, of course. Unbiased and On The Fence. And if anyone wants to email me, they can email me at shanecrob@gmail.com. That's SHANECROB@gmail.com. And the best way really is to either email me if you want to get a hold of me, or to find the channel Unbiased and On The Fence on YouTube.
All right. Well, thank you, Shane, for the educational Mandela Effect class that you taught today.
It's fun times we're in, man.
Oh, yeah. Thank you guys for joining me on Talk is Cheap. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Go over to those other channels. I got them linked down below, and subscribe to those, I guess, because I don't know if YouTube will get pulled on us. I'm actually still in YouTube jail on the live stream. I get that back, I think, in a couple weeks here in May 25th. But that sucks when they do that. And what are you going to do? It's monopoly there. So see you guys later.